Right, well, trust you can hear me. Just as I was getting the show started there, the computer suddenly did something strange. So just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, and we'll carry on. If not, I'll have to restart. Okay, if somebody can just give me a heads up before I waste my time talking for too long. Yeah, okay, Paul says loud and clear. Excellent. Okay, not quite sure what the glitch there was. I know Facebook's been playing strange games again this morning. Took me a while to get the show actually uploaded as a schedule. Anyway, what have we got for you today in show number 388? It's Wednesday, 29th of November. We have a story about a nuisance rider who managed to convict himself with his own TikTok videos. The NEC's electric charging hub, some visitors to the motorcycle show discovered it was more expensive than petrol. We'll have a quick look at the UK's most crashed car models. And there's a story going around that a new speed camera spells trouble for bikers because it catches you from behind. Well, that's been a feature of speed cameras since 2007, but that seems to have escaped one motorcycle journalist. A question that's been asked too is why don't we have more dual carriageways? And a very simple answer to that too. But one question I will ask that I think has a genuine point is, do new headlight designs inflate repair costs? We'll also have a quick look at a new Thruxton 400, which has apparently been seen out testing on the roads. And we'll have a look at another bike that's likely to fly a bit under the radar, which is KTM's new 250 single. And finally, we'll have a quick look at how to care for your visor. And this will be my tips to keep your visor in tip-top condition. So stay with me till the end of the show for that. Clive's looked in as well. Good morning to you, Clive. Right, so on with the show. Now, don't forget the weather forecast is something to be keeping an eye on at the moment. It's definitely not looking too great out there. We're in the middle of an unusually cold snap, of course, at the moment. And whilst it's not unusual weather for the middle of the winter or January, it is a bit unusual for this time of the year. Anyway, it's remaining chilly today. On the plus side, it will be largely dry and bright across most of the country. Some sunny spells. It's fairly bright here at the moment. The sun's hazy sunshine. Just a few wintry showers towards the coast and particularly across the northeast of the UK. And there will be some rain arriving in the southwest later. Now, that's important because as the frost will develop through the evening, and becoming widespread overnight, where those showers have fallen, it'll turn icy. Now, as the rain itself spreads across the southwest of England, it will turn to snow over the moors. Looks fairly light, looks fairly patchy, but keep an eye open for ice and snow if you're out and about on the bike. And the outlook from Thursday through till Sunday looks to be pretty much more of the same. So that's the weather for bikers. What have we got for you in the news? Well, pulling daft stunts on an illegal electric motorcycle is fairly dim in the first place, but frankly, filming yourself doing it is even more silly. And then posting the clips to TikTok, complete with a full face image of you gurning into the camera, is absolutely Sub-Zero on the IQ scale. Now, not too surprisingly, the videos which showed a 23-year-old Kane Tilney hurtling around Darlington as he rode his illegal electric e-bike on the wrong side of the road and up pavements, and all without a helmet, allowed Durham Constabulary to track him down. And the police got their own back by filming his arrest and posting the video themselves to the internet. The videos that he filmed were described as a treasure trove, and they were naturally used as evidence following his arrest, and he was charged with 20 offences, and he admitted those earlier this month, was sentenced to 12 months in prison, suspended for 24 months. One point of interest watching the police video is I didn't think they used the expression "you're nicked" anymore, but obviously they still do up in Darlington. Now, if you went to the motorcycle show at the National Exhibition Centre, the NEC in Birmingham, you may just have travelled by electric car or electric bike. And if you did, you may just have headed to the NEC's charging hub, which was proudly opened by Chancellor Jeremy Hunt earlier this year. Now, the site is operated by BP Pulse. I've got a photo of it. Hopefully, here it is. Yes, there it is indeed. It's near the Starbucks. It's operated by BP Pulse UK, who are a subsidiary of the, you guessed it, BP, the oil company. Now, it has 150 7 kilowatt AC charging bays here, and it also has 30 of the superfast 300 kilowatt DC chargers. And not too surprisingly, there would have been a few visitors making their way who turned up on electric vehicles. Now, one such was Lorenzo Santana, originally from the USA, and he made his trip to the motorcycle show to mark Thanksgiving with a friend. They needed to charge up for the return leg of their 190-mile round trip. And he said, I found out about this place online and it seemed logical to leave the car on charge whilst we went to the show. But unfortunately, he discovered things didn't go too well. Now, firstly, like many drivers who've apparently tried to get their vehicles charged at this hub, he found difficulty even getting started. He said it's not so simple as tapping your bank card on the side of a machine. To use it, you have to have either an RFID card or the app. And there seems to be a glitch with the app. He spent 10 minutes trying to get the app recognised before spending another 10 minutes on the phone to the BP Plus helpline, who finally authorised his charger for him. And then when he got the bill, he discovered that the electricity he'd been charged for was not only much more costly than charging at home, but he was paying much the same as he would have done for petrol. Santana said it's much more expensive than charging at home. At home, if I charge at night, I can get it for just 9 pence per kilowatt hour. This is charging me 69p. It works out as expensive as petrol. The operators apparently justify the cost by pricing similarly to the higher fuel costs at motorway services. So there are clearly costs of installing this infrastructure. It doesn't come cheap, but it would be interesting to know how much of that bottom line has been picked up by the government grants for electric infrastructure improvements, and how much of the charging costs are therefore being pocketed by BP. I would love to know that. Now, long term, I said many times that since the first EVs appeared, that the Treasury is unlikely to be able to ignore the loss of duty on fuel sales, declining fuel sales indefinitely. So I'm sure EV charging will rise towards the cost of petrol and diesel, but just interesting to know where that money goes at the moment. Right, so what have we got for you next? Well, oh, that's completely the wrong picture. That's last show's Kawasaki. Anyway, back to the news banner. Now, if you want to know which cars that you should be looking out for on the roads as a particular risk, there are a few recent studies which can give us some answers. Now, top of the individual models is the Toyota Prius. Now, next to the Honda Insight, this is actually the first and second most crashed cars. The perennial favourites in third and fourth place happen to be the Range Rover and the Defender, and as we'll see later, there should be a high alert around Mercedes-Benz vehicles too. Now, a fairly astonishing I've got myself in it. I thought I got this all sorted again. All right, forget that. Let's just get that out of the way and get that going. I thought I had a picture of my Science of Being Seen photo, but it seems to have disappeared. But if you know my Science of Being Seen project, one of the photos I use is of a Prius crashed into an unmarked police motorcycle. And it seems that a fairly astonishing 1,236 Priuses from just over 100,000 registered vehicles were involved in a reported injury collision in 2020. I'll leave you to work out the percentage for yourself, but it's pretty remarkable, so it does seem I was right to use that photo, the crashed Prius, for my Science of Being Seen. There are only 8,900 insights registered, but again, the percentage of those which are involved in collisions is surprisingly high. 90 of those nearly 9,000 have actually had a reported injury crash in a year. Now, why is that? Well, both those vehicles are hybrids, and it may not have escaped your attention that both are popular vehicles for the use of drivers who work for ride-hailing services like Uber. So it may not be quite as grim as it sounds. The average Uber driver will be covering many times the average driver's mileage in a year, but of course that means you'll come across them a lot more regularly too. However, interestingly, the Range Rover and the Defender, those stalwarts of the school run, weren't much better. There are 118,500 registered Range Rovers on the roads around this time, and something approaching, well, more than 1,000 of them were actually involved in a crash. The numbers of Defenders are much lower. There's about 17,000 of those, but 143 were involved in an injury accident. So again, pretty high rate of collisions, and we may see why in just a moment. Now, here in London, if you want to look out for a particular brand, the answer is Mercedes are the ones to avoid. They are involved in more than 1 in 5 crashes in London. That is an astonishing percentage, even given the popularity of the brand. And if you want to know what time of the day you need to keep your eyes open, an analysis by Aviva shows that the worst time for collisions is Friday between 3 p.m. and 3:15, which just happens, of course, to be the height of the school run. Now, Aviva's 2022 collision data shows that more than 1 in 4 of all collision claims were between 2 and 4 p.m., which of course coincides with peak afternoon school traffic. Rather to my surprise, the morning and evening commute slots between 7 to 9 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m., they didn't actually feature in the 5 times that you are most likely to have a crash. So some interesting data there, which kind of goes against the some of the what we believe about the high risk times of the day. Anyway, school runs in the evening, they seem to be the bad times. Right, okay, Claire's looked in. Good morning, Claire, nice to see you. And Nick's here too. Nick, haven't seen you for a bit, nice to see you as well. Right, okay, so one of the things that always baffles me is why we have such poor journalism in some of our motorcycle press. I realise they probably don't pay a great deal of money, but even so, it's not that difficult to check a press release and to do a bit of research. So I in a certain biking website that I won't actually give a name to, I won't embarrass them any further. Let's just have a zoom in on that so we can have a look at it. This is the Vector SR1 speed camera, and the website, as I say, I won't mention the name, but probably working out. They said new speed camera could spell trouble for bikers. So I picked that up. So I thought, oh, I'll have a read of that and find out what trouble I'm going to be in thanks to this new speed camera. And I discovered that it features infrared technology, and that could be bad news. Well, why? What's new about that? Well, it says, to quote, most speed cameras in the UK, especially those average speed cameras found on motorways and dual carriageways, dual spelled D-U-E-L. You may want to fight your way down the dual carriageway, but I'll try not to, thank you. I'll use G-U-A-L as the term. They only utilise a camera facing one direction, quite often looking at the front of the vehicle, with motorcycles not having a registration plate that's viewable in front of the bike. Should a rider accidentally stray above the speed limit, the chances are that the speeding fine would not be recorded or issued. That's not something you can get away with here, it seems, as the multi-direction detection of the Vector SR could put an end to this situation. Well, I hate to say it, but the UK's first speed camera, a Gatso device, was installed on Twickenham Bridge in 1992 in South London, and the Gatsos have always been positioned to catch the rear of the vehicle so as not to dazzle the driver with a flash. The only camera that I know for sure originally flashed in your face was the much rarer Truvelo. But apparently it was beyond that, there was also a sting in the tail. The writer points out that because they're IR, the motorists will quite possibly not be aware they've been captured breaking the speed limit. Traditional speed cameras flash as the vehicle drives by. The infrared technology found on the new Vector SR means there's no hint that the camera's been triggered. Well, as far as I know, the first infrared cameras were introduced as long ago as 2007. So what is the real difference in this camera? Well, it means basically that a single pole can operate in both directions. Previously, they have been a sort of one camera per lanes, or at least per direction of travel. So this will catch you going both ways, and it can also be used to spot seatbelt compliance issues and mobile phone use. So I really wonder sometimes whether these people actually bother to read the press release. And as for the line, a rider accidentally straying above the speed limit, well, frankly, that's why you've got your speedo, isn't it? So nonsensical piece of news. Meanwhile, if you wanted another piece of nonsensical news, look no further than the This Is Money website, where Rob Hull, not Rod Hull, no emu involved, said, why don't we have more dual carriageways? And he went on to cite what experts say and a new analysis to claim that dual carriageways make up less than a fifth of A-road miles despite cutting traffic and pollution levels. So all the topical stuff we want to see. And this new analysis appears to have been by the AA, and they reported that converting single carriageway AA roads into dual carriageways, they improve traffic flow and air quality whilst reducing collisions. But they then went on to say that the proportion has only risen from 17 to 18%, 1%, from 2012 to current. And Edmund King, who's the AA president, he's obviously a big fan of dual carriageways, because he said, quote, the dualling of key A roads greatly enhances connectivity and indeed road safety. And he went on to use the example of the A11 in Norfolk as a great example. Apparently he uses that to get to Norwich to watch the Canaries. Now, having used that road a fair amount myself, it's true that the dualled A11 is much improved over the old mishmash of roads which did connect Norwich to the top of the M11. But Steve Gooding, the director of the rival RAC Foundation, brought us back neatly to reality, and he said, for a whole array of financial and environmental reasons, it's implausible to think we'll see large-scale initiative anytime soon to dual our single carriageway A roads. Now, the fact is, dualling a road takes far more land than the single carriageway, whilst the actual construction destroys roadside verges, which are often surprisingly old, and act as very, very important nature corridors for wildlife to get around. And for the locals who happen to live where the roads are being dualled, it creates months, if not years, of disruption, delay, noise and pollution as the work goes ahead. Now, I happen to be using the A11 for 3 years because my ex's lad was at university up there, so I was up and down that road fairly frequently to take him to college and pick him up again. And the roadworks happened to be, they started just after he moved up there and they finished just before he quit the college. I think it was the last trip up that it was actually done. Now, when the road was completed, it was lovely. But for all the other trips, of course, for those 2.5 years, it was absolute nightmare of delays, temporary sections of roads, hold-ups. And of course, it's ruddy expensive dualling a road. Steve Gooding actually said that it would be a more practical and cost-effective answer to improve safety on A roads. And he said that we should be looking to engineer out identified problems and hazards rather than trying to upgrade hundreds of miles of routes. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Let me know what you think. Do you think we should be digging roads up willy-nilly and spending lots of money resurfacing them just to make it easier to get from A to B? Or should we be looking at hazard spots and trying to work out why they cause a problem? Now, I didn't mention Porsche in that list of crashed vehicles, although I gathered that there is a study which said that they did pop up fairly high up the list. And if you've ever wondered why insurance as a cost is climbing, look no further than this particular item here. Now this is, let me just go full screen so you can see precisely what it is. This is, believe it or not, it's a headlight, and it's a new HD matrix LED headlight, which has been developed for Porsche. Set to be introduced at some time this year, not quite sure when, and it's claimed to have new standards in anti-glare, high beam lighting performance, and it differs significantly from existing headlights in Porsche models because the high and low beam functions are now carried out by two separate lighting sources per headlight, which is what you can see down here in the bottom corner. Those are the two light sources. Okay, so now what do you get for your money? Well, each of those LEDs there is not just one single LED, it's not even a small array of LEDs, it's actually no less than 6,384 of them said to be the thickness of a human hair. So over the 4 units, that's 65,000 LEDs plus. Now I'd be interested to know the lifetime of those LEDs and just what level of failure the headlamp itself is deemed to have failed. Anyway, that's for down the line. Now the intensity of the high beam HD matrix light can now be adjusted in no less than 1024 different steps. With the operation at 60 Hertz, apparently refreshing the light every 16 milliseconds. This is claimed to reduce glare and dazzle on road signs and the like. Now, the high beam itself can project out to 600 meters using a new HD ECU camera combo. And this can detect other road users, including oncoming cars. And what that does is it allows those areas to be blanked out within the zone of light projection. Now, two questions here. Does that mean that the drivers will stop bothering to dip their lights on high beam because the theory is that the driver coming towards you will be sitting in a puddle of no beam? I don't know, but one of the problems with these super bright lights, of course, is that the glare from the light, even when it doesn't shine directly in your eyes, it reflects off other surfaces. Even dry roads will reflect a certain amount of light back to your eyes, and wet roads it really is very, very dazzling. And of course there's also the problem about when a car comes over a hump, like a speed bump or top of a hill, even a dipped beam is going to shine in your eyes. So I really do worry about the brightness of these things, but of course they want more complexity too. So as well as those regular low and high beams, you also get ground illumination lights, and you get an additional high beam that fires up even more LEDs for some reason or other. If they haven't got enough there already. You get adaptive highway settings, it says, which can reduce sign glare, and that dynamic safety zone, which apparently blanks out those other vehicles. Oh, and if that wasn't enough for you, then Porsche also give you an animation which plays when the lights turn on and off. Porsche says the unit is not heavier than the unit it replaces, although I suspect it'll be a heavier hit on your wallet should you drive your Porsche into something and demolish those lights. Right, okay, so comments. What do you think about those ultra bright lights? Do you think they're a bonus? Do you think they're a problem on the roads? Which angle do you see them from? Now, bit of bike news we have for you today, and this is the first of them. If I get the picture up for you, there it is. Let's just give you the zoom in picture. That is the KTM 250. Now, when they first launched their range of Indian built starter models, you may remember that they comprised a 125, a 200 and a 390. Now, predictably here in the UK and in Europe, it was the 125, which is learner legal, of course, and the intermediate license friendly 390 that got most of the sales. I think I never saw a couple of the 200s here in the UK, and it wasn't actually that long before the model was dropped. But it doesn't mean the intermediate bike wasn't popular overseas, particularly in India, of course, where they are made. But the 200 has now been replaced by a 250 Duke. And it's said that it's an all-new model that shares virtually no parts with the 200 it replaces. Now, just how much of the motor's brand new is open to question, since the new single takes the old 200's bore. It actually lengthens the stroke, which is unusual. What normally happens is you keep the stroke and naturally make the bore bigger, but they've gone the other way, so the bike is closer to a square displacement. But it seems that it can it's retained the original twin cam 4-valve head from the 200 because the bore's the same. I don't know whether that's changed or not, probably not dramatically. Puts out a fairly decent 30 horsepower, 22 kilowatts. I often think we forget how much fun something like an RD 250 was, and this is probably about the nearest equivalent you can get to an RD 250 on modern motorcycles. KTM claim the ride-by-wire motor has fewer parts and is lighter than the outgoing motor, but it hasn't stopped the bike gaining 15 kilograms over the old machine, which makes it a fairly porky 149 kilograms dry. Now that's 330 pounds, and I always compare these bikes with the benchmark of my old CB250 RS, which in 1980 weighed in at around 125 kilos dry. By the time you've added fuel, 13.4 litres incidentally, so a fairly big tank, and probably the battery too, and oil, you've probably get another 20 kilograms on top of your scale there, so that's around 375 pounds. Possibly that's why KTM quoted the dry weight on their website. My guess is it's probably the all new steel trellis frame that's the main culprit. It drops the seat height down by about an inch, 2.5 centimeters, which is nice for shorter riders. But usually an easy cost-cutting method is to build a frame from thicker walled, lower grade steel. I know that certainly was done by Suzuki with their GS500, which really put on weight, even though the bike was outwardly unchanged. The tank is also steel now. That will also add weight over the previous plastic tank, but it might be a bit more E5 fuel resistant, E10 fuel resistant. Wheels are new, and yeah, are they heavier or lighter? Don't know. Brakes are by Brie, that's the Brembo budget line spin-off. You get a slipper clutch, you get Bosch ABS, the rear can be turned off for sliding it around corners, and the suspension travel was increased by a couple of centimeters either end too, but not non-adjustable. You just get preload on the rear. Switch gears new, now standard 5-inch LCD dash, which naturally pairs up with your KTM app. The bike comes with Indian-made MRF steel brace radial tyres. These are made by a Chennai-based manufacturer who've actually been making tyres for 3/4 of a century, so it'll be interesting to see how they cope with European and conditions. Right, okay, so what else is new in the world of bikes? Well, back in July, when I was talking about the upcoming release of the 400 singles, Triumph were also sending out messages that they were going to be bringing out a sporty Thruxton version with a family resemblance to the bigger Speed Triple RR, and that is actually the bike that you're seeing here. Now, the Thruxton 400 has been shown in some fairly grainy shots. I won't bother to show you those because they are pretty poor quality. But what you can see from those photos is that the bike doesn't get that sleek-looking exhaust that you see on the Triumph here. It's the fairly sort of clunky-looking exhaust system that is on the standard 400 speed, but you do get lower clip-ons to give a slightly sporty riding position. Foot pegs appear to be in the same place, and you do get this sort of a mid-70s look fairing or something very similar to this one here. Now, why make some changes to the bike? Well, basically you get an extra model in the range, but using the base machine and keeping most of it standard will keep the bike hopefully competitively priced, but of course I'm always dubious that they won't find an excuse to lob on £500 or so for the new model. But it does get the same 398cc single cylinder liquid cooled motor as the Speed 400 and the Scrambler 400X. Whether it gets any tweaks beyond the 39.5 horsepower of those two engines, no idea. I'd probably doubt it, but with the fairing fitted, they may just have little room to stretch the gearing, lift the top speed very slightly. So, okay, I've forgotten to say, if you've got any questions, of course, do drop me a line. If you've got any comments on those earlier stories, I'll certainly be interested to hear them. And if you do enjoy the show, don't forget to set yourself a reminder. Wednesdays and Saturdays, almost always live at 11. Occasionally it goes out recorded, and very, very rarely I miss a show. Right, I may have to put out a recorded show actually in December towards Christmas, as I'm likely to be away for a couple of days. Right, so, okay, moving on to our in-depth item. This is the view through my screen from my onboard camera, and you can see what happens to the light when the sun is in front of you and the screen is a bit worse for wear. Now, interestingly, when you actually turn the bike to face the other way, the screen doesn't look too badly scratched, but as soon as you face the sun, you can see the problem. And this is the problem this time of year when we're looking through a scratched visor. So how do you keep your visor clean? Well, the first step I would say is, if you haven't already done it, this is the time to fit a new visor. You really need to maximize your vision on the bike now. And the second tip is to take care of it. So carefully cleaned, you should be able to get at least a couple of years use out of a modern visor. When I last changed the helmet a couple of years ago, replaced my old flip front for a new one, and it was still actually on the original equipment visor, and it was still perfectly usable. So what's the trick? Well, the first thing to avoid, and probably the most important of the lot, is to avoid using any of those visor wiping gadgets. You will often find that on your forefinger, there is a rubber strip on the inside of the glove seam, and the idea is that you wipe your visor with this, and it acts a bit like a windscreen wiper. And you can also get sort of like slide-on rubber gadgets which attach to the forefinger as well. And again, the idea is that you wipe the visor to clear the water off. Well, the thing that I would say is, having tried them, they only achieve two things. The first thing that they do is that they smear the visor very neatly, because the water on your visor isn't perfectly clean. It's got oily deposits in it. You may not notice it really until you do the visor wiping thing, and then you'll find your visor's gone all smeary. So it makes it harder to see in the short term. So I don't use anything like that when I'm riding. Second thing, longer term, is that these visor wipers will wreck the anti-scratch coating on your visor, because the water that you are dragging off the visor not only contains those sort of smeary oils, but it's also going to have specks of road grit in it. And if the roads have been salted, as they will have been at this time of year, you'll also have salt crystals on your visor. That's what makes the visor go sort of cloudy when you ride around on damp treated roads at this time of year. That's salt crystals, and salt crystals are surprisingly hard. So if you drag either this grit or the salt crystals across your visor with a visor wiper, you will scratch the surface of the visor. And cleaned badly, you can write a visor off in days like this. So, having started with a new visor, or one that isn't too badly damaged, start by cleaning it. Now, if you're doing this for the very first time and you've got a dirty visor, the first thing I would say you do is you rinse it with some running water, some warm running water. So that does mean you're going to have to take the visor off the helmet. Then apply some mild soap. What I would do is I rub some mild soap into a microfiber cloth. Some people actually recommend baby shampoo, as it's very gentle. And then what you do is you wipe the muck off that hopefully is mostly washed away and definitely got loosened by the running stream of water. You clean it very gently with that anti-scratch cloth. Don't use paper. Paper is abrasive. The cellulose in it, again, is pretty tough stuff. So don't forget that the inside of the visor will have an anti-fog treatment in many cases, and that also needs to be cleaned with a lot of care. If you're very rough with that, you'll wipe that out very quickly indeed. And if you have used something like a Fog City style shield on the inside of your visor to double glaze it. It's great for preventing fog, but if you don't clean that very carefully indeed, you will find that scratches very, very rapidly, and that makes it very difficult to see if you're riding into the sun like this. So anything that's on the inside of the visor needs treating with a lot of care. So as I said, use a microfiber cloth, clean both sides of the visor, sort of pat it dry, and then you're ready for my next trick. Now this is where I use Mr. Sheen furniture polish and then polish it in with a microfiber cloth. Now I've been using Mr. Sheen for many years, ever since a chap called Peter Gidman suggested it to me. Now he was Arai's senior helmet technician in the UK here, and he ran the Arai service truck in the paddock for all the British Superbike, World Superbikes and MotoGP rounds, and with his team he was responsible for overhauling the Arai supported riders' lids. So I always thought he probably knew what he was talking about, and that's where I got the recommendation from Peter Gidman to use the Mr. Sheen. Now vitally, the propellant in this particular aerosol doesn't affect the visor's anti-scratch coating. That can't be said for all spray-on treatments. Now it does two things on the outside of your helmet. First of all, it stops the grit actually getting to the visor surface when you have built up a layer of wax there, and that makes it easier to clean without scratching, because there will always be that layer of wax on the surface. It actually works for summer bugs quite nicely too. So again, what I will do is I will rinse the visor with running water, and then most of the muck actually floats off away from the wax, and the rest I then spray the visor with some fresh Mr. Sheen, and I clean it carefully with the microfiber cloth, and that gets off the final little bits of dirt, and then again rebuilds that wax coating. So when you come to clean the visor, again, just rinse it, lay a damp cloth over the top, leave it for a few minutes. That should get everything cleaned off when you wipe it very gently clean, and then you put Mr. Sheen back on, and then you polish it dry. So each time it's cleaned and sprayed, you get that wax coating on the top of the visor, so it really does help protect it. Now if I need to clean it while riding, which is possible if it's if there's a lot of mucky spray coming up, then what I will do is I will stop somewhere. I won't try and wipe it on the move. I will take a couple of minutes to clean it properly. So what I have is again a couple of microfiber cloths under the seat. I have a one that's kept in a zippy bag and is damp, and I have another one which is kept in a zippy bag with a tiny bottle of Mr. Sheen in it. I just use an old sort of hotel shampoo bottle, fill it up with the Mr. Sheen, so I can then wipe the visor clean with a damp cloth and then retreat it with another layer of Mr. Sheen. So it's basically the same approach I use in the kitchen, but just on the move. And trust me, the results are far superior than trying to wipe it with a glove. It may cost you a moment while you stop, but your vision, once you move on again, will be far better. So current visor, a couple of years old. It's just got a couple of marks from a couple of stone chips that have hit the visor, and there's also a couple of little scratches where I've actually banged it into something, but otherwise it's almost perfect clarity. And when it rains, of course, the wax that's on the surface actually helps water bead up and run off. So anything over 40 miles an hour, all I actually need to do is simply turn my head like that. Even 30-ish, it works to some extent. But you'll find the water beads up into big drops rather than sort of a smeary coat over the full visor, which happens when you've wiped it with a visor wiper. So yeah, it's not perfect. You will have to clean your visor every day to keep the wax fresh, but you want to clean your visor before you go on the bike, don't you? And it's quick and easy. And of course, the killer point for me is, yes, you can get specialist treatments to clean your visor, which you can pop into your motorcycle shop and you'll find something that will do the job just as well as Mr. Sheen. But it'll be a tiny little bottle and it'll be about 5 times more expensive. So Mr. Sheen, I get a can of that. It lasts me, well, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I bought one. I found some in a sale and bought about 3 or 4 of them, and they're still in the cupboard. I'm still using them. One final tip, one to avoid: don't use Rain-X, which is intended for glass. There is a Rain-X, I believe, which is now intended for motorcycle visors, but by all means use it on glass mirrors, but don't use it on plastic, because I'm informed that the solvents that are in the glass version actually damage the anti-scratch coating on a visor. So right, that is it for today. Slightly shorter show than I managed on last week, when it went on a little bit. Paul says inflated costs of charging EVs when travelling and at destinations inevitable. Really, government may offer incentives, kickstart provision of infrastructure, but ultimately it's the consumer, not forgetting the taxpayer, who has to pay. Yes, galling though these charges are, perhaps EV drivers need to consider how these are offset by charging at home or significantly lower rates. Yeah, I don't think it's any great surprise that anybody making some infrastructure improvements is going to probably try to make the most out of it. And Claire says, yes, cannot see when my visor is impaired. No, indeed. Yeah, much easier when it's not impaired. She says she does use a Bob Heath visor wipe, but the visor's £60, so I don't want to wreck it. We'll try the washing and Mr. Sheen method. I rarely carry microfiber cloths, but we'll have Mr. Sheen one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you don't need a huge microfiber cloth, and that's one of the great things about them, is you can cut them into small chunks as well, so you can wash, keep one clean and washed, and keep one ready to use. All right, okay, that is it for today. Thank you very much again for looking in. Very much appreciated. Just a couple of quick reminders before I go. First of all, don't forget the Black Friday deals are still open for a few days. And don't forget, you can grab yourself a copy of 2 books, which I've never previously released as ebooks. That's Mind Over Motorcycle and the Survival Skills, the DIY handbook to understanding advanced riding. And also, if you missed the Science of Being Seen presentation on last Monday, that is still available on catch up. If you head over to my coffee shop, you can still get a seat for that for a few days. So if you have enjoyed this show, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, do like the shows. All of it helps. Tell your biking buddies if there's anything that you've found particularly useful, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on YouTube. Of course, if you do want to find the channel easy, it's easier on YouTube. Yeah, that's it pretty much for today. If you are out there on the bike, remember that whilst the weather's pleasant-ish now but cold, there will be ice forming later, so do watch out, particularly if you're down in the sort of southwest or up in those northeastern coastal areas. Right, that is it. See you hopefully on the next show, which will be on Sunday at 11. And if you are out there, stay shiny side up.